Right now, new and current customers can get any phone for free at US Cellular, so you can connect with all your family members this holiday season. You could even call your aunt who always makes you talk to your cousin, who's a dog. Or, maybe just send her a festive text. Get the gift of connection at US Cellular. Get any phone free today. US Cellular, built for us. Terms apply. Visit uscellular.com for details.
We value human connection with fewer distractions. US Cellular, built for us. Visit your US Cellular authorized agent, Cellular Advantage, located at 918 South Locust Street in Glenwood.
When you download the Baker's app, you have easy access to savings every day. Get the most out of weekly sales and receive personalized coupons to save on your favorite items, all while earning 1 fuel point for every $1 spent. Baker's makes it easy to save while you shop, whether it's in-store or online, so you get the most value out of every trip, every time. Download the Baker's app now to save big on your next purchase. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Must have a digital account to redeem offers. Restrictions may apply. See site for details.
Hello, thanks for joining us again. This is Space Nuts. I'm your host, Andrew Dunkley. It's so good to have your company yet again. Coming up on this, episode 339, we talk about Mars. Got a couple of stories coming out of Mars. More unusual formations have been showing up in the press. You may have seen them. We'll talk about those. And Martian samples dropped by Perseverance. It's delivered its entire payload now. So what happens next? Plus, we will be answering questions about travelling faster than the speed of light, Artemis 2 and 3, and the L1 and L2 Lagrange points. That's all coming up on Space Nuts.
15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 10, 9, ignition sequence start.
Space Nuts.
5, 4, 3, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Space Nuts.
Astronauts report it feels good.
And joining me, as always, is Professor Fred Watson, astronomer at large. Hello, Fred.
Hello, Andrew.
How you been?
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I'm in a bit of a panic because today I leave to go to Vienna.
Yes.
I'll be in Europe for a month, and I haven't done anything in preparation other than a lot of paperwork, which you have to do when you travel officially.
What more do you need rather than a pair of stubbies, a T-shirt, and a pair of thongs?
Well, a good jacket for a start. It's really interesting, and we've done it many times because in the days before COVID, Marnie and I used to take tours up to the Arctic at this time of year. So we'd leave a hot summer's day in Sydney and turn up in snow in Helsinki or Oslo or Stockholm on our way up north. And we kind of got used to it, but I'm afraid I'm out of practice. I'm so out of practice, Andrew, that I cannot find all the European adapters that we've got stashed away somewhere because, of course, we've moved house since we needed them last, and I'm sure I've put them in a safe place somewhere, but it's so safe I can't find them.
Yeah, well, we lost ours after the trip to the Mediterranean because the bottom of one of our suitcases split open.
Oh, dear.
On the zip. And when we unpacked, there were two things missing. One was with our toiletries and the other was with all our adapters and cables. So we lost all that. But for the most recent trip we did, we bought these new adapters that are battery packs with all the different cables for all the different devices that you could possibly have, as well as that you just drop it on and it charges. Can't remember what it's called. And they were fantastic. They were brilliant. And they were legal on a cruise ship. They don't let you take power boards on cruise ships because they draw too much current and puts a lot of pressure on the ship's system. So they generally confiscate those. And the ship we just went on to New Zealand, at the end of the cruise, as you're leaving, they have the table of shame and they have everything they've confiscated laid out for people to claim back. I just wondered how many do. Power boards, irons, kettles. You're not allowed to take any of that stuff on a cruise ship.
Of course not. No, that's right.
It was funny. But these things we took were legal because you just charge them and then you charge the devices unplugged. So really, really handy. And you can charge 2 or 3 things at once, which is even better. So very handy. I'll show you what they are. You ought to get one for your travels, Fred. I think you'll...
Maybe should investigate that. That's right.
Yes. Now, we've got a lot to talk about. In fact, we've only got one thing to talk about, and that's Mars. So, and there's been a fair bit in the news in recent weeks about some of the things happening on Mars, one of which we'll get to later. This situation where they see a rock and they suddenly decide it looks like, I don't know, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. But that's happened again.
It has. It's a phenomenon well known, and I've talked about it a bit. In fact, I do a whole talk on this because there's so many different examples on it. It's a phenomenon called pareidolia, which is very familiar to psychologists, and it's about the fact that when we look at inanimate objects, we often make them into something else, and it's usually an animal or a face or something familiar. It's everybody's seen patterns in the clouds. Doesn't that cloud look like a dachshund or a cat or whatever it is? It's perhaps most noticeable or maybe most prevalent in the world of astronomy and space science, because there are often patterns which we see in celestial objects where you've got something like a face. I remember it's probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, there was a beautiful evening with the crescent moon and Jupiter and Venus in the evening sky. And it looked like a smiley face. The two eyes and the grin. In fact, I did a whole ABC radio segment on it from the studio there, with people standing outside watching it. And I think, if I remember rightly, it was capped off by the International Space Station that went past at the same time. Anyway, to cut to the chase, all the things that have been seen on Mars are extraordinary. And I guess they started back in 1976 with the face on Mars that was seen by the Viking orbiters, which, when NASA took a closer look with subsequent space missions, and they actually rerouted them so they could go and have a look at this thing. It was just a hill with a kind of sunken top. But the rovers themselves have produced epic images of things ranging from a top hat on Mars, which one commentator said was probably the consequence of a Martian a Martian kidnap of some poor human being. The top hat on Mars, there's been tires on Mars, there's ghostly ladies on Mars, lots and lots. Oh, the spoon. The spoon's a really good one because it looks exactly like a spoon, and it's actually a little outcrop of harder mineral. But anyway, the latest one comes from one of the well-known spacecraft in orbit around Mars, which is Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, a NASA spacecraft which has been up there for decades, I think now.
Yeah, it's going really well.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. It has a high-resolution camera on board, the High-Resolution Imaging Experiment, otherwise known as HiRISE, from which we've seen many images, including images of rovers on the surface. But what its latest triumph has produced a storm of interest on Twitter, because normally when HiRISE publishes photos, you get just a few thousand views probably, but this particular one generated over 350,000 within a couple of days, and it came from the University of Arizona, which actually is responsible for the HiRISE camera. So what you've got, let me describe it: a circular region of fractures, which is almost certainly an ancient crater, quite large, but so it's a quite interestingly circular formation, and it's got two smaller craters which are almost equal in size, maybe came from the same impacting object, which just look like eyes, and then a curious kind of broken smile, which is almost certainly a hill, or certainly a rise in the terrain, whose summit has collapsed in terms of the structure, the geology. It's actually collapsed, maybe because of these subsequent impacts. So what you've got is something that some people have thought it looks like Winnie the Pooh, or basically a bear of some kind. And I find it a bit of a stretch, because to me the broken hill looks more like a beak, and some have suggested, it looks like an angry chicken.
I can see that too. My initial reaction was it looked like a bear.
Yeah.
So, It actually also looks to me like the logo for Pie Face, the company Pie Face.
Yes, I do, yeah. Yeah, that's right. So, the broken hill looks a bit like a snout with a bit of a grin in it.
Does.
But, yeah, it's caused a lot of interest, and it's really nice that this process continues, that we continue to see faces in things. We've seen faces in the sun, we've faces in the galaxies, and as I just said, we've seen faces in the sky with Jupiter and Venus and the crescent moon. So it's not really, I guess it's of scientific interest from the point of view of psychology. It's the way people perceive things.
We do this a lot, don't we? And what really fascinates me, Fred, is it's always making the news. This stuff seems to just be newsworthy, and I don't understand why.
Well, neither do I. I think it is because we try to
humanize everything.
We do humanize it, and I think it's great because it draws attention to what's going on around it. Probably people wouldn't bother looking at pictures of the surface of Mars taken from an orbiting spacecraft, and this draws their attention to it, and maybe they get interested and have a look at some more that don't have faces.
I suppose so. We've probably got to think of a name for it.
I don't even know whether this crater has a name. Actually, it's
maybe
it's one that it's a really interesting structure. Kind of, as I said, like a sunken crater.
Yeah. One suggestion is it looks like a grizzly bear. I can see that.
Yes,
but I'm thinking we should lean more towards red panda.
All right. Okay. Yep.
That would make sense.
It would make sense, yes. It's kind of got a panderish look about it.
Now, you suggested it was an impact crater, perhaps. So that broken snout in the middle, the rise, could that be the impact point and the rebound?
What it might be is, yes, there is when big craters form, they've got to be above a certain size. You do get a central uplift. So often when you look at craters on the moon, they've got mountains in the middle. They are usually dead center, though, in the center of the crater, and I think that's just because of
a bit too far south.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, and I kind of wonder whether the hill that formed that curious valley that looks like a smile, whether that is a more recent feature than the crater itself, because the crater is really a ghost crater. There's not that much evidence of it other than this broken ridge. It almost looks like a series of trenches around the outside.
Yeah, it does.
There is some interesting structure in it, which I haven't really had a chance to look at. I need to go back to the original release from JPL to find out what we're looking at here, because this almost almost looks like a zip fastener in places. This curious circular structure.
Oh yeah,
and I'm not sure how something like that will be formed. So
there's a suggestion that the middle piece, that uprise, could be partially created by lava flows.
Yes, I guess that's right. And so certainly the whole area looks as though it's perhaps had lava flows. I don't even know which bit of Mars this is on, and of course Mars has got lots of different geographical regions.
Yeah.
Some suggest a volcanic or mud vent. And as you said, lava flows or even mud flows. I mean, that comes about because we believe that the subsurface of Mars has a lot of water locked up as ice. If you get something that hits the surface of Mars and heats it, then you're going to get potentially a mud flow. And we know on Ceres there are these dome, essentially volcanic. I think they're called volcanic domes. They're just a dome that doesn't have a crater that's caused by upwelling mud from underneath the surface. So this might be something similar.
Well, it's fascinating, but and I notice in some of the stories they've dug up old photos of other things that have been photographed in astronomy, and a lot of them are faces. We just seem to gravitate to faces, don't we?
Yeah, especially smiley ones.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, you don't really want evil faces in space. That's
well, no, that's right. No, you don't.
So I don't think this will be the last. I'm sure there'll be more and more of this stuff happening, whether it's bunnies out of the clouds or some kind of weird thing on Mars. I know sometimes the popular press pushes it to the stage where they're claiming that there must be Martians there because that couldn't be natural.
That's certainly happened, yeah. And there's
many times.
One particular British tabloid in particular that tends to do that a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you remember, it wasn't very long ago, there was it's a rock face on Mars, and this has come from one of the rovers, but it looked exactly as though it had a doorway in it. That sort of, the photograph that from the angle that they were looking at it looked as though this rock face had a doorway in it, and of course that was seized upon by the press. But the doorway was only going to be 40 centimeters high or something like that, so it wasn't anything that humans could walk through.
No, but hobbits.
Hobbits, that's it. Hobbits on Mars.
Yes, that's where they come from. I'm pretty sure.
Mm.
But yes, it's a strange phenomenon, this one, pareidolia. I wonder if dogs and cats and other animals sort of make these things.
There's an interesting one. I bet the veterinary psychologists know the answer to that.
Well, I know when dogs and cats see their own reflections, they react.
Yeah.
But that's not the same thing. Seeing a solid object and thinking, well, although I have seen videos of cutouts of cats, and they put them in front of a cat, and those cats freak out. So maybe there is something to it in the animal world as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, if you want to take a look at the pie face or the Paddington Bear or whatever you want to call it, you won't have any trouble finding it anywhere on the internet because it's everywhere. I think just about every major news outlet in the world ran a story on it. So check it out. It's and if you can think of a name, send it to us. I'll be really interested if you can come up with a great name for it. That'd be fun.
That'll be great.
This is Space Nuts. You're with Andrew Dunkley and Professor Fred Watson. Just taking a short break now from our show to tell you about our sponsor, NordVPN, a sponsor that has been with us for a very long time and for a very good reason. They are the best in the business, and you, as a Space Nuts listener, have an exclusive opportunity to get NordVPN and many of their other services at a very low price. Not forgetting they also offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Now, I've talked before about the value of a virtual private network. It's a way to log onto the internet and put that barrier up between you and people who are unscrupulous enough to try and get your personal information, including your banking details, credit card details, anything that they can get to fleece you. And it's very easy to do these days. And if you use public Wi-Fi at all, it's even easier. Now, to take advantage of their current offer, you go to the special URL, nordvpn.com/spacenuts, and from there, click on the Get NordVPN Plus Gift. So let's take a look and see what that means. So if you go with a 2-year plan, you can get the standard service, which gives you secure high-speed VPN, malware protection, and a tracker and ad blocker. If you want to go for the next level of package, they'll add the cross-platform password manager. That is really handy to have with so many passwords that you've got to remember these days. There's also a data breach scanner. But if you go the whole hog and get their complete package, it's an extra terabyte of encrypted cloud storage on top of all their other services. So you've got all those options. You can go a 2-year plan, a 1-year plan, or a 3-month plan. Obviously, if you go 2 years, it's heavily discounted, and they're offering 1 month free on top of all of that. Now, to take advantage of the NordVPN offer as a Space Nuts listener, it's easy to do. Just log on to nordvpn.com/spacenuts and click on Get the Deal. nordvpn.com/spacenuts.
Roger, you're loud and clear here also.
Space Nuts.
We'll be staying on Mars for the time being, Fred, because there's another story that's got a bit more mainstream interest, I suppose, at least from a scientific standpoint, and that is one of the roles of Perseverance, one of its major roles, was to collect samples, and it has done that mostly successfully.
Yes, that's right. So this is a story that, in a way, goes back some months because what's happened is Perseverance is equipped with, of course, a drill that can extract samples of rock, and those rock samples wind up in a tube, which is then sealed within the Perseverance rover, and what they've done is NASA has kind of covered their bases by, I think they've collected a total of 17 of them. So the first one there's two parts to this story. One is the collection of the tubes, which has been going on for quite some time, and Perseverance has been up there for 2 years, is it now?
Oh,
flies,
yeah,
isn't it?
easily.
3 years. 3 years, yes, it is. And the tubes have been, I think they've done 17 of them altogether, of which 10 are being left as a sort of a dump, a depot, as they call it, on the surface at a place with the geographical name of Three Forks. So there must be 3 forks in the road or something like that. But Three Forks is a place where they've dumped these 10 tubes. Now that's why the story's in the news, because the 10th one of them has been laid down. I guess only a short time. This is the point I'm trying to get to. That since the first one was laid down, they've basically they laid the first one down in December 2022, and they've laid the last one down in actually right at the end of January this year.
Yeah.
So what the story is, there are now 10 of these things sitting on the sand of Mars, and they basically just dump them to be picked up by an eventual sample retrieval lander, which is something that's still being worked on, I think, by both NASA and ESA, the two space agencies, to go and collect them. But as I understand it, there are still 7 more which are still in the body of Perseverance itself, which will keep going. One thing that intrigued me about this is that the samples that have been dumped on the surface have been, they kind of pop out of the underneath of the lander of Perseverance, the rover, and there is a camera on board the rover. On the end of it's sort of got an arm that's got the drills on it and things of that sort. On the end of that, there is a camera which is called Watson, and Watson is a familiar name to me. It's essentially a camera that is designed just to look closely at whatever the arm is looking at. I'm desperately looking for it, because it's an acronym, of course, and I can't remember what it stands for, but I thought it was a very nice piece of work on NASA's part to have a thing called Watson on board. Here we are. The instrument on the end of the rover's robotic arm is called Sherlock.
I was going to say there's got to be some other
Sherlock. Yeah. Doesn't have a K on the end. And Watson is the camera that takes the close-up pictures of the rock textures. But unfortunately, the acronym is eluding me at the moment, because I did quite like it. Anyway, Sherlock and Watson can do quite a lot of stuff together, because they've got sensors that let you look at the spectroscopy, the color of these images that you're taking of rock samples. So you can actually work out what rocks are there just by the reflectivity. I think that there might be, is it Raman spectroscopy? There is some fairly advanced technologies that are used.
Right. Wide-angle topographic sensor for operations and engineering, starting with an N. Engineering.
That's right, yeah. And
bit of creative license there.
Sherlock is the scanning habitable environments with Raman and luminescence for organics and chemicals. There you are.
That's a pretty good one.
Sherlock and Watson, yeah. Raman spectroscopy is a technique that was perfected actually in the 1920s, but it's quite advanced in terms of what we do, when we're investigating these things. Anyway, it's great that Watson's played a part. Watson can kind of look underneath the rover as these capsules are dropped, and there's some footage on some of the websites that show this process happening actually in test runs, so that they can make sure that they land properly. They don't stand up on end or get stuck under one of the wheels of the rover. They can check where the things have landed.
Yeah, you don't want a bad bounce when that happens, do you?
That's right. That's exactly right. So we... I
think in testing they did actually drop one and it landed on its end and stood up.
Yes, that's right. That's kind of what you don't want. You want them lying down nice and neatly so that a future recovery mission can pick them up easily.
That's where it's headed, isn't it? To the recovery phase, and they're still kind of working on that. We don't even know when.
It's likely to be towards the end of the decade, I think. The bottom line is that what Perseverance has done has dumped these 10 things in the depot, these 10 sample capsules, but now they're off again. They're as the deputy project manager Rick Welsh said, with the Three Forks depot in our rear view mirror, Perseverance is now headed up the delta. And of course, it's an ancient river delta where Perseverance is, because we think that's where there'll be sediments dropped. So Rick said, we'll make our ascent via the Hawksbill Gap route we previously explored. Once we pass the geological unit the science team calls Rocky Top, we'll be in new territory and we'll begin exploring the delta top. So that's actually quite exciting. That we're going to find investigations now of the top of the delta. Who knows what might be there, because it's possible that that's the area that might be richest in any organic materials that were left behind as that delta dried up.
And that's the point of these samples, to see if there is any evidence of organics or even previous life forms on the planet.
That's right. Yes. So it's Perseverance is definitely an astrobiology mission. Its main task is to look for signs of ancient microbial life, and maybe those samples that they've collected already have that. That's an exciting thought as well, that there are samples on Mars that might, if we could get our hands on them, tell us whether there have been life elsewhere in the universe.
I'm a bit of a pessimist, because I reckon what's going to happen is all the samples are going to come up with nothing, and then in 100 years, when we're walking all over the place, they'll go up and say, "Oh, look, if they'd only gone an inch to the left."
Yeah, that's right. Yep, you never know, do you? You just never know.
I'm very hopeful, actually. I'm pretty excited. I'm disappointed that it's going to take the rest of the decade before we find out anything. But I think it'll come up trumps. I think they'll find something.
Well, in my heart of hearts, I do too.
You're not so confident?
I'm pretty optimistic, like you. Of course, as a scientist, you're always hedging your bets, but I'd guess that something in that stuff would speak of biological activity.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
We're halfway there, though. We've got the samples. That's the main thing.
That's halfway there, exactly. It's a glass half full, Andrew.
Indeed. And you can chase up that story on the, now I've got to find the website. It is the scitechdaily.com website if you're interested in reading more about that story.
Now, during the Jeep Black Friday sales event, get $12,500 in lease support on the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland 4xE. $12,500 lease support includes cash allowances and $7,500 federal EV incentive provided by lender as a capitalized cost reduction and is subject to change without notice. Lessees cannot claim federal tax credit on their personal tax return. Please confirm this information to ensure its accuracy and availability. Consult a tax professional for details and eligibility. Not all lessees will qualify. Residency restrictions apply. Take delivery from dealer stock by 11/30. Jeep is a registered trademark.
See care in a new light at Madonna Rehabilitation Hospitals, where top medical minds lift you up, where the very best in specialized rehabilitation brings out your very best, where over 60 years of breakthroughs in research and technology spark your newfound strength. In our world-class hospitals, this is something greater than rehabilitation. It's renewed strength for life. Learn more at madonnarehab.org.
Space nuts.
Okay, Fred, let's get into question time because we've got a couple of fresh ones and we're asking you to send in fresh questions, so please do. You can do that through our website, of course, various ways of sending us text or audio questions. Now, our first question today, Fred, will be from Rennie.
Hi, this is Rennie Trout from West Hills, California. I was wondering, theoretically, if you were able to travel faster than the speed of light, how would space and time behave? Thank you. I really love your podcast.
Yeah, we love it too, Rennie. But
when it works.
When it works. Thank you for your question. So Rennie's asking, what would be the effect on space and space-time, I guess, if you could travel faster than the speed of light? This is not an unusual topic. People have asked us similar questions in the past.
Yeah, and in fact, there's a theoretical entity, which is a subatomic particle called a tachyon, which is hypothesized to travel faster than the speed of light. Now, that has never been, it's never been investigated. It's never been discovered. We don't even believe it's real. But it's if you put the theory into the mathematics, sometimes it gives you interesting results about other things. So tachyons don't exist as far as we know, but people have looked at the exactly the world that they would see. If you could imagine life from the point of view of a tachyon, the first thing, of course, is time goes backwards, to an outside observer, if you're traveling faster than the speed of light, time is going backwards, and that's quite unusual. And I really don't know how to get my head around that, Andrew. I should look at a little bit more into the life and times of tachyons and find out what they would think. In terms of the appearance of space, if you're going faster than the speed of light, you're going to see a very odd universe because you're beating the light that's coming to you from other parts of the universe. I know that I've seen simulations of what the universe would look like seen by an observer traveling at almost the speed of light. And you get this funny effect of everything being crowded together in the direction of your travel because of a phenomenon called aberration. And it's because you're detecting light that's coming in at one angle, but your own speed actually makes a big difference. It's something that was discovered actually in the 18th century and observed by some notable astronomers of that period. Essentially, we see it on Earth. Let me just explain that for a minute, what it's about. As the Earth goes around the sun in its orbit, the Earth's motion of 30 kilometers per second means a little bit like if you're walking through, this is the old analog for this, if you're walking through a rain shower, the rain is coming down vertically, but as you're walking, you've got to tilt your umbrella forward because you perceive the rain coming towards you slightly. And it's the same thing with light. That's the principle of aberration, as it's called, and was measured, discovered, and that, as I said, 18th century. That phenomenon taken to extremes will be what you'd see if you were traveling at nearly the speed of light. You'd see the whole universe aberrated so that everything that you could see in space will be crowded up in front of you. Now, if you were traveling faster than the speed of light, maybe you'd see it all crowded up behind you. I'm just kind of pulling guesses out of the woodwork here. But I should, check out, Renee, the thing to do is check out tachyons on the web, because that will tell you a little bit about the idea of faster than light travel, even though we believe firmly that it is not possible for anything other than light to travel at the speed of light.
Yeah, the only thing that's going faster than the speed of light is the universe itself.
Well, in its initial stages. Yeah. And what you're talking about there is the separation between two bits of the universe. They could have been moving away from each other faster than the speed of light, because the universe itself is the framework within which light travels. And so that speed limit for light, it only applies to things traveling through the universe, not the universe itself.
And as you and I have discussed, the capacity to travel faster than the speed of light would require more energy than there is in the universe.
In the universe, yes, that's right. Even accelerating you and me to the speed of light would demand infinite energy. So it would be it'd be a bit self-indulgent, really, wouldn't it? If we took the entire energy budget of the universe to get nearer to the speed of light.
I very much enjoyed all these interesting theories and concepts that they've come up with in terms of travelling at certain speeds, even if not at the speed of light. The twin paradox is probably one of the best, where one of them remains on Earth and the other one does, was it a 5-year journey at
something
such
like
and such
that.
a speed? And when he comes back, his twin on Earth is 20 years older than him or something. I can't remember the exact paradox, but it's very clever. We've also talked about which way time would go. Now, I think I recall you saying that you can only go forwards in time. You could never go back. But if you go faster than light, could you go back?
Yeah, I think that's the point. You go backwards in time.
Yeah.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
It would depend on where you ended up.
Yeah.
I mean, you really wouldn't want to drop down into the middle of the Crusades or the wars.
You might not even want
the Holy Roman Empire or something.
You might not even want to drop down in the middle of 2023, actually.
No. But
anyway.
And when you think about it, there aren't too many eras where you would want to drop in.
No. Yes, that's right.
No. All right. Thank you, Rennie. Great question. Always fun to talk about that particular topic. Now we will hear from Paddy.
G'day, Fred and Andrew. It's Paddy here, roofer from Sydney. It's been a while. Last couple of years have been pretty hard, COVID and all that sort of stuff. But Artemis 1, the DART mission was awesome, by the way. Watched that live. But Artemis 1, Artemis 2, okay, so Artemis 3, are they really going to go back to the moon? Like, I don't know. Maybe. Well, where's my seat? I really want to go. So, Fred, please tell me how I can apply to NASA and get on, a spaceship and go there. May the force be with you all.
Thank you, Paddy, and lovely to hear from you again. Yeah, it has been a while since we heard your dulcet tones, and I hope all is well in your world. A few questions in there, Fred. When and how will Artemis 2 and 3 evolve, and how does Paddy, or anybody else for that matter, get on board? I suspect you have to go to TAFE, which is like publicly funded college in our part of the world, and get a certificate 3 in engineering. That might be enough.
Could be. I think it's more likely that it's not enough.
Probably not.
So just recapping, Artemis 1, an uncrewed mission around the moon into a very elongated or big orbit around the moon. Very successful November, December last year, to be followed by Artemis 2, which will include the crew. It'll be the same as Artemis 1, but there will be a crew on board. If I remember rightly, it is 4 people. I'm pulling things out of my memory from what we were talking about at the end of last year, but I think that's right. And that will be it's a sort of equivalent of Apollo 8 in the Apollo era, when the astronauts basically went round the moon just to make sure that humans can survive that sort of distance from the Earth. The same will be true with Artemis 2, and I think it will take place on that, or it will go into that very extended retrograde orbit. Actually, it was going around the moon the wrong way.
Do you think when they sent Apollo 8 to do a lap of the moon, they said to them, look, we're just sending you out there to see if you'll survive?
I think the astronauts knew that.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And then Artemis 3 is scheduled to have the first woman and the first person of color landing on the moon's surface, which will be brilliant. So Artemis 2 likely to be next year, 2024 probably, and Artemis 3 maybe 2025, but perhaps more likely 2026. And these are NASA's kind of flagship missions to open the way once again for human spaceflight to the moon. Now, meanwhile, there is a person called Elon Musk who's also thinking about, going to the moon as well as Mars with people on board. And his plans with his Starship, which is designed to take 100 people into orbit, that might be the way, Paddy, that you will be more likely to get a ticket to go to the moon. It might not be for a while yet, but I bet once he gets going, Elon's SpaceX will actually have commercial flights to the moon, which may be for a few very rich people, or it may also involve scientists. But I think that we're going to see that taking place as well. In fact, it's the upper stage of Starship, which will be used by NASA to lower the astronauts down onto the surface of the moon when Artemis 3 takes place. So SpaceX is already deeply involved with it, but you can bet your life that there'll be a commercial aspect to it somewhere down the track as well.
Oh, I think, and it won't be too far down the track, that commercial space flight and sending, being able to buy yourself a ticket to do a lap around the moon and eventually land and walk on the moon as a tourist will be common. I think this is going to be very normal, as will suborbital flight, because it'll be so much faster in terms of delivering people from one place to another. And I've heard them talk about Sydney to New York in 2 hours and things like that.
Well, that's right.
They'll be able to get right up there at high speed and get down much faster than just doing it the old-fashioned way. So,
exactly. And as somebody who's within the next 24 hours facing a 24-hour flight to get to Vienna, I will look forward to that suborbital method of getting around, because and I think you're right. I think that will happen. It's possible that Virgin Galactic could be doing that, because their rocket plane would be capable of doing that if they had, runways to land on in the right places. It could take you from A to B very quickly indeed.
Indeed. Yeah. It's not far away.
Cool.
Thank you, Paddy. And of course, I wouldn't write your possibilities off yet, because once they get habitat on the moon and start putting colonies there, they're going to need roofs. So
that's right.
Paddy the Roofer. Paddy the Roofer. Now, we've got one more question before we go. This came from a YouTube viewer. Mike said, Fred suggested that a telescope at the L1 point could search for NEOs, near-Earth objects inside the Earth's orbit. Would it be better to go to the L2 point of the planet Venus or Mercury for this? How much more difficult would it be? It's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm sure that's considered as a possibility. I think what you're really interested in is the smaller objects, and if you put your telescope too far away, it's going to be more difficult to detect those, because they'll be fainter. So the L1 point of the Earth's orbit, 1.5 million kilometers inside the Earth's orbit, might very well be the perfect place to do it from, because you can survey the region ahead of the Earth in its orbit and the region behind, and would I think pick up a lot of stuff that we're missing at the moment. I think we currently think we've got 39% of objects in the 140 meter class, and they're the ones that we're really trying to nail down, because they are potentially very dangerous. but they're not easy to find because they're relatively small. They're not going to wipe out civilization, but if you happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, when one of those hits, it's going to be bad news. I think we mentioned it the other day, the NEO Surveyor project. Can't remember whether we talked about that.
Yeah, we did.
It's a NASA project which is on the stocks, and I think L1 is where it's going to go.
Okay, simple as that. I'm certainly pleased that they're doing a lot of work in regard to this because, we have the technology and we have the, we now know we have the capability in its earliest forms of dealing with objects that threaten us. And it would be a pity to be in a world where we have all this science and technology and capability and we don't use it for the right purposes. So I'm glad this work is being done and will continue to be done. And it certainly throws up a really strong argument to all of those people saying, why are we spending money on astronomy when there are people starving in the world? Well, it doesn't matter if they're starving if we get hit by a big rock.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Thank you, Mike. Great to hear from you. And hello to all our YouTube followers. Great to have you on board again. Now, if you have questions for us, please send them in because I think our next episode is by default an all questions episode, so we need questions. So please send them in via our website, spacenutspodcast.com or spacenuts.io, and click on the links. The AMA tab at the top allows you to send text or audio, and the send us your voice message tab on the right-hand side of the homepage is where you can send an audio question. Most devices have a microphone these days, so it should be easy. Don't forget to tell us who you are and where you're from. And while you're at it, join the Facebook group, Space Nuts Podcast Facebook group. It's a user-generated group that talk to each other and share photos and ask each other really interesting questions. So the Space Nuts Podcast group on Facebook, as well as our official Space Nuts Facebook page. And we're on Instagram, and we're on YouTube, and we're on Twitter, and we're on, what's that other one? I don't know. TikTok. You'll find us on a lot of social media, so you can follow us there as well. We are done for another week, Fred. Happy trails.
Thank you.
How do you relax on a plane? Can you sleep on a plane long haul?
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah,
I can sleep anywhere but on a plane. It's really weird.
Yeah, I'm probably sleeping for quite a lot of this flight. I usually play music on the headphones. I seldom watch movies.
I tell you what, I found a cure for jet lag. I know it's not a lot of jet lag when you fly from New Zealand to Australia, but there's a couple of hours disruption. Get a general anaesthetic. That'll fix it. Like that. It does.
Yeah. Well, of course, you've got immediate experience of that.
Yes, I have.
Fix everything.
Yes, it does. All right, we'll leave it there. Look, I'd be really interested to talk to you about your time overseas at those various conferences and some of the serious matters that are being discussed. So we can catch up on that, not too far down the track.
We will. We will indeed.
And travel safe, and we'll catch up with you soon, Fred.
Sounds great. Thanks, Andrew. Take care.
Fred Watson, astronomer at large, part of the team here, as always, on the Space Nuts podcast. And back to here in the studio, we thank him for all the work he does behind the scenes. He works very, very hard between his coffee breaks. And from me, Andrew Dunkley, thanks for listening and or watching Space Nuts. We'll catch you on the very next episode. Bye-bye.
Space Nuts. You've been listening to the Space Nuts podcast.
Available at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favorite podcast player. You can also stream on demand at Bytes.com.
This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.